Welcome to Caregiver Cast with Mary Elaine Petrucci. Are you overwhelmed raising a family, working full-time, caring for a parent or grandparent? It can be challenging when you're doing it alone. Caregiver Cast helps busy, burned-out professionals reduce their stress and overwhelm to create a better caregiving experience for themselves and their loved one. Caregiver Cast brings caregivers together with experts who provide information in a variety of areas. In each episode, you'll get tips on topics such as finance, legal, medical, self-care, community resources, mindset, and more. We're here to make your caregiving journey a more rewarding one. Acquire the confidence and skills to be a more capable caregiver by implementing the resources and strategies from these expert thought leaders. Get a community of support, resources, and strategies for your caregiving journey inside the Caregiver Lifeline community. Visit caregiverlifelinecommunity.com. And now here's your host, Mary Elaine Petrucci.
Hi, welcome to Caregiver Cast. I'm Mary Elaine Petrucci, your host. My special guest today is Dr. Gillian Lockitch, who will be talking to us about creating your roadmap for aging in health. Before I formally introduce Dr. Lockitch, I'm just going to give you some information about her. Dr. Gillian is an international speaker, author of Growing Older, Living Younger, The Science of Aging Gracefully, and the Art of Retiring Comfortably, and host of the Growing Older, Living Younger podcast. Until she retired from her 25-year career as a dual certified specialist in pediatrics and medical biochemistry and professor at the University of British Columbia. Her professional career was deeply rooted in science. During her rehabilitation from life-saving emergency spinal surgery, she researched ways to combine medical and epigenetic science with other healing traditions to change aging at the cellular level. After creating her personal Growing Older, Living Younger roadmap for aging youthfully, she founded the Growing Older, Living Map for Aging Youthfully. She started the Growing Older, Living Younger project to help others keep independent, active, and vibrant as they age. She became a first-time entrepreneur at 70, building a global online business in wellness, beauty, and anti-aging to complement lifestyle changes to enhance living younger longer. Welcome to Caregiver Cast, Dr. Gillian.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here, and I'm really honored to be able to talk to you about my roadmap, but also because it made me think about my role as a caregiver prior to my husband's death from kidney cancer. And that kind of forced me to think about memories that I really have suppressed for a long time. And I think the benefit of that is going to be immeasurable to me too. So thank you so much for the invitation to talk on your show.
Well, thank you so much for being here. I'm looking forward to seeing how you can complement what you did as a caregiver for your husband and how that played into your role as having this new company and being an entrepreneur after you retired from practice. So let's start there. How was your caregiving experience with your husband while he had kidney cancer? And tell us about how that led you to where you are today.
Well, the first thing that I would say is every time I've talked about the pivotal changes in my life that basically helped me become both an entrepreneur and a coach for people who want to understand how they can age in health, I always start the story with one of the pivotal events being the death of my beloved husband early from kidney cancer. And when I was thinking about a number of the aspects of the pillars of my roadmap, in preparation for talking today, I realized that really my story should have started 5 years earlier, before he actually passed away, with a diagnosis of kidney cancer. So Bob had always been a healthy, active individual. He was a squash player, right into his 50s. And the precipitating event was discovering it was kidney pain and then blood in the urine that led to an immediate investigation, x-rays, CT scans, all of that. And he was a very independent person, so he went to all these investigations by himself, and went to meet with the urologist again on his own, because I was working and busy, and he didn't need me to accompany him. And I remember very vividly the minute he came home and he said to me, Dr. X says that I have renal cell carcinoma. And that pivotal moment may not have had the same impression on the average person, but I had been teaching pathology to medical students for a long time. And to me, when I heard renal cell carcinoma, immediately what flashed into my brain was, oh my gosh, the 5-year survival rate for that at that time was vanishingly low. And so I guess I really, really suppressed what happened after that. So most of the time, he managed his disease and the treatment by himself. Obviously, he had surgery. There wasn't any chemotherapy or anything at that time. So it's really a question of just, accompanying him to the visits and things, to the cancer agency for his therapy. And he tried to maintain his independence as much as he could. He kept on working, stayed on driving. So the main impact of being the caregiver for him was that I don't think I slept for 5 years. My sleep was disturbed. I was basically not functioning very well. But I realized all that time that it was absolutely critical for me to maintain activity, to keep up with my fitness classes, to eat well and do all the things that I later sort of combined into a roadmap. So that's really the genesis of how the Growing Older, Living Younger program began, almost, I guess, 15, 20 years after that.
Wow. I'm sorry to hear about your husband passing. I know it's hard when you lose, it's a challenge, I should say, when you lose someone that you really love.
Right. And I think the key thing to that was, as I sort of describe in my book about the time that he passed, I suppressed the mourning and all of that. And it took like 5 years before I allowed myself actually to mourn.
Yes.
And again, this is why I'm so grateful to you for your invitation, because it really forced me to think that I had actually suppressed all those emotions and those memories from 5 years before the actual event. So this has been a blessing for me.
Well, thank you for that. I hope that it's been part of your healing. I know it was hard for me after my brother passed away at 15, and just feeling that having the survivor's guilt and feeling that I couldn't live my own life, that I went through life not really experiencing it fully, because it just seemed every time I got close to people, my immediate reaction was that they were going to possibly die. So it's hard, and it's a challenge to move forward. And you have great memories of your husband, and kudos to you for taking care of him for 5 years. Being sleep deprived is really one of the hallmarks of caregiving. So I appreciate that. Thank you for sharing. So from what you experienced with your husband, how did that help propel you into doing more research and starting this podcast and this company?
Well, the event that really finally got me thinking about what we can do to age healthily in mind and body
Correct.
was really my catastrophic spinal issue with spinal stenosis that caused sciatica, and a 4-month period of me being a depressed, anxious, becoming overweight, a couch potato, living in excruciating pain for 4 months, until emergency spinal surgery basically cured the pain and enabled me to start my rehabilitation process, because ballroom dancing had become my post-retirement passion, and I desperately wanted to be fit enough to go ballroom dancing again. And it was during the course of learning what I needed to do to become basically a dancing doc again, that I went back to my medical roots and started researching everything that I had originally focused on, nutrition, physical activity, human metabolism. This was my medical specialty for 25 years. And that was when I really started digging into the power of epigenetics and realized that it wasn't just what we ate or how we exercised, but it started in the mind, which is why I think your work is so important. And that, starting from even the thoughts that we have the power to change gene expression, which is what epigenetics is, and therefore change our metabolism. So once I had basically figured out what I needed to do and created my personal roadmap, I really started digging deeper into all the sort of 7 pillars that I had sort of constructed. So the first dealt with really understanding your genes, your ancestral history, what age did your parents and grandparents die? What were the particular illnesses and things that they had? And then going on to look at mindset, what our limiting beliefs were that would stop us from aging well, how we preserved our cognitive abilities. So the chapter in my book for that is called Mindset, Mindfulness, and Mind Keep. And Mind Keep was the phrase that I coined because it helped me understand the various things that we could do to preserve all our cognitive functions, from memory and speed of processing and the various sort of kinesthetic senses. So that was a really important aspect. So the second pillar was to do with the mind. And then the third pillar is to do with the fact that we are fundamentally what we eat. Everything that we put into our bodies, whether it's nutritionally sound and good for us, or the additives and the bad things and the toxins that we're exposed to, really helps formulate what we become.
Mhm.
And, you know, then other chapters dealt with the need to constantly challenge ourselves, because the minute you stop stretching,
Mhm.
you know, it's analogous to your muscles. When you stop stretching your muscles, they become solid and less flexible and less able to perform the tasks that they have to do. And similarly, when you stop stretching your whole being to try new things, to experiment, whether it's volunteering or learning a language or learning another skill, musical instruments, again, that's a sort of step downwards on the aging trajectory. And then I really began to realize, as a result of that spinal injury, during those 4 months in which I really didn't want to see anybody, I started to realize how important the the need for connection and to feel part of a community is.
Mhm.
And so one of the pillars is all about communication, reaching out, and starting to feel part of something that is greater than you.
Mhm.
And I'm losing track of all the numbers. I think number 4 or 5 was to do with our ability to change the concept of ageism
Okay.
by
Yeah.
changing the way people perceive us. And so,
Mhm.
you know, when people when I meet a new person, you're looking at their physical presence
Yes.
as before you actually start understanding their essence and their soul. And so doing what I could to preserve a youthful, vibrant um, appearance became very important. And that's where I describe the epigenetic power
Mm.
of a number of the home spa devices and the skincare products and things like that
Mhm.
that I started to use and embrace. So how many pillars have I gone through now? I
I
should really
think
count on my
6.
fingers.
I think we're on 6 or 7. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I think that sort of covers it. We've talked about mind, we've talked about and of course the one I didn't mention is mobility and physical activity.
That's so important.
Yeah, it's somebody once said to me, in fact, I think it was my Rolfa, who was also instrumental in helping me rehabilitate after surgery. And sort of as a digression, Rolfing is one of these things that's all about the fascia.
Yeah.
And it seems to me that it's really, people used to think about fascia as a sort of stuff you threw away, after surgery. And now we're realizing that it's actually a very metabolically active tissue and critically important.
Mhm.
So, all sorts of things that I think contribute to unhealthy aging include things like your posture. And, I find myself struggling with the tendency that many of us get as we get older to, have that forward posture.
Yes.
So that's for me an ongoing battle and something that I work at daily. The importance of not
Mm.
leading a sedentary lifestyle. So as I sort of mentioned to you earlier, I usually do all my work standing, and there's a very limited time during the day that I find myself sitting down. And we know that sedentary life is sort of has been equated to one of the things that's
Mhm.
like smoking.
Right.
So I think I've covered the 7 pillars. I should really have my book in front of me and just go through that. But I think people will enjoy reading about my journey
Mhm.
because although it's called The Science of Aging Gracefully, it it really is a memoir as well as the science. And the reason that the book evolved in that way was, I set out to really discover all the science underlying epigenetics and what we needed to do to age well. And after looking at 300 or 400 pages of the latest science, which is still evolving, I realized nobody was going to read that book. And that's when my daughter suggested to me, "Mom, tell your story." And so the book that I ended up writing was not the one I had set out to write, but I think it's a far more valuable and enjoyable and readable book than 300 pages of science would have turned out to be.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing the 7 pillars. It's so important and so critical to look at all of those pillars as we age so that we are maintaining our health and our posture and lowering like a fall risk and just being the most vibrant person that we can be. So I'm glad it turned out as a memoir because I think it would have, and it does have more impact on the people who read the book because they could see you rising from your challenge of spinal surgery to start a new company and really focus in on those epigenetic changes that we can very easily change ourselves. And that, again, I think it starts with mindset because it's what you think is what you do. And if you want things to change, you have to change your mind. So how did you get?
Agree with you.
Yes, exactly. So how did you get from doing all this research on epigenetics to then, did you see a change in yourself when you were doing the research and establishing those 7 pillars? How did you then move from how it helped you to helping others?
Oh, absolutely. So during the course of the rehabilitation, and I was really looking at a 10-month period to be able to get from the day that the operation took place to the day that I could step on the dance floor on a cruise ship at the end of the year. And so during that time when I sort of formulated what I needed to do, and I really wasn't even thinking about it in terms of, the 7 pillars or a growing older, living younger program. It was simply acknowledging what I had to do in those areas to benefit myself. And in 10 months, I obviously did not get back to the sort of completely vibrant, entrepreneurial, active person that I was, but I had started on that plan. And so an interesting thing happened after that. It wasn't really during that first 10 months. But one of the things that I had done when I left medicine, I took early retirement from medicine and really wanted to focus, I'm a Gemini, so I wanted to focus on the cultural, social, artistic part of me rather than the scientific. And I had a website that I had been using for a long time. It was called reviewfromthehouse.com. And it basically started because I was doing theater reviews, online theater reviews, which started from the fact that my daughter was in theater, and I was going to all these plays and things that were put on by independent companies, and quite often seeing that, there might be 4 or 5 people on the stage and less than that in the audience. So I needed a way to be able to share these kinds of independent productions with more people so that they would hear about it, because, these small theater companies didn't have advertising money and really couldn't compete with the major production companies. And so that was the genesis of my original website called Review from the House. And associated with that was, before I would go to the play, I usually go out with a friend and we'd have dinner. So I started writing up the meals and, taking photographs. And I was doing that, long before everybody suddenly started, photographing everything they ate. And so that ended up with the second part on my original website on food and wine. I did wine tasting courses and studied some sommelier kind of courses. And then when I started ballroom dancing and dance cruising, I incorporated travel writing. And that became sort of the third part of that website. But so what happened as a result of this website and me, reporting on or reviewing anytime I traveled anywhere, whether I went to New York or Chicago or San Francisco, I always saw theater and wrote reviews. And somehow I got onto the media lists of publicists from, all over North America. And I started getting invitations to, I could have attended really shishi sort of openings in New York or whatever. But obviously I wasn't traveling to that. But one of the invitations that I got locally was to review a trade show, the Wellness Show. And yeah, so I basically went to that. It was a 2 or 3 day event, looking for things that I could recommend in the area of health, beauty, etc., on my website. And I was really perturbed by a lot of what I thought was sort of this snake oil kind of thing, solutions offered without a lot of clinical data, etc. And so I was in quite a bad mood when I finally came up to this booth, and it sort of said a scientific basis, or a scientific base for anti-aging. And it's sort of like, I talked to this lovely lady who was sort of the booth, one of the booth representatives, and I said, so what is your scientific basis for healthy aging, and etc.? And she started talking about epigenetics and showed me a heat map, which had been the basis for creating one of the early products. So, you can't really talk in a trade show. So I invited her to come to call me and sort of set up a visit and come to my home, talk to me more about this, which is very unusual actually in what later turned out to be a network marketing business. Anyway, so when they came, they were talking about a series of things that could be used to turn back, in a way, gene expression to the way it would sort of occur in a younger person. And one of the things that they showed me was a face spa, which we called the wrinkle iron, because using this twice a week maximum for 5 minutes in the privacy of your home with the appropriate gels really helped decrease the wrinkles and I was really worried at that time about sort of the crepey neck and all of that kind of thing. And so this was basically a month before my 70th birthday. And
goodness.
And so I said to them, look, my kids are coming up from, my boys were in the US, my daughter was in Toronto doing a PhD, and they're having a small birthday party for me, for the big 70th. And I said to her jokingly, okay, so if I get this and use it, are people going to think I'm 25? And she just laughed and she said, we can't guarantee any age reduction, but you certainly should see, a smoother, less wrinkled, more hydrated skin. So I thought, okay, I'll give myself a present. And I bought this particular wrinkle iron. And sure enough, I used it twice a week for 4 weeks, so 8 treatments, and came my birthday party. And people said to me, Jill, what are you doing? We know you would use injections. You don't believe in Botox and all those injection things. What are you doing? You look 10 years younger. And I said, well, I have a wrinkle iron. And people asked more about what is it? And, where can I get one? And so that led me to think about becoming an entrepreneur for the first time. I'd always had jobs as a professor or, even as a department head. You're always in a situation where there's somebody above you who is sort of dictating things like, the protocols and the hours and your salary. And so I got my son, who had been in finance, to do an evaluation. And he said to me, Mom, this particular company has been, quoted on the New York Stock Exchange for a long time. They have been in business for a long time, and yet they seem to be very innovative and research, and you've got nothing to lose. So I think that you should switch from being just a customer to being an affiliate and start your business. And what's more, I'm going to get my wife to do the same. And so a number of my other family members who were present, including my brother, said he would do the same. And that was really how I started this business. But what happened over time, as I was sort of working through various aspects of the pillars, I began to realize that the products complemented what I was teaching people about the lifestyle changes and the changes in habits that would help them in the various areas. And so that's how my current approach is. So when I teach people, about what I think would be specifically beneficial in their individual unique lifestyles, where there are products, whether it's a nutritional supplement or a skincare product, that I think would enhance what they're doing to help their bodies make the changes rather than, go on medications and drugs and things like that. I introduce it to them, and, then they can decide for themselves whether this is something that they see as a benefit for themselves. So that's really how both my 7 pillars and my business have kind of evolved and become integrated. And so I wrote my book, I started my podcast, which is also called Growing Older, Living Younger. And the next evolution of that is that I now have an app, both Apple and Android, and it's called Growing Older, Living Younger. And it's in an early stage. There is some content, but I plan to offer most of my content, my courses, etc., through this app. So people will have their roadmap, so to speak, in the palm of their hand.
Nice. So walk us through now. Congratulations on the app, by the way. I think that's really amazing. How can you then take this roadmap and really start to implement it? I hear that you're doing some coaching now. So is that the best way for caregivers to be able to access the roadmap as well as the coaching that you do?
Yes, but I think because everything is so personalized, and I'm not actually running my the Growing Older, Living Younger. But actually, the program is called the Change Your Aging Master Plan, and I'm not going to be running it for the next 2 months. So the the best way for people to reach me, excuse me, I've got a frog in my throat here, is to basically set up a 30-minute free private, I call it discovery call, to see what their unique concerns are and to talk about, what is the best way for them to approach it.
Excellent. And how can people get in touch with you, Dr. Jill?
Well, the two main ways, my email is askdrjill@gmail.com. That is askdrgill@gmail.com. But I hopefully will give you a link that you can put into your show notes,
Yes.
that they can click and set up an appointment.
Excellent. So give us an idea of the 3 takeaways you want caregivers to know about and to really start emphasizing in their lives so that they can age gracefully.
I think the first and probably most important is for people to acknowledge that taking care of themselves is actually of primary importance. It's not something selfish, but in order for them to best take care of their loved ones, they really have to put their own self-care first. And the second takeaway is, although all the pillars are important, it's important to maintain communication so that you have other people that can share some of your burden. It's important to eat well and keep active. Probably the most important things that I see from the self-care point of view is you have to make sure that you get enough sleep, and you have to use every modality that you can to reduce the impact of stress on yourself.
Definitely.
And do I have a third one? I think the third one is really to acknowledge that as you support your loved one, you need to be open and accepting of support for yourself.
Oh, that was amazing. I totally agree with you. Self-care and just having that open communication with people and asking for help. It's so important. So thank you so much, Dr. Jill, for coming on and talking about your journey to age gracefully. And people can also listen to you on your podcast. And that is Growing Older, Living Younger. So I would really encourage my listeners to listen to those podcasts because Dr. Jill has a lot of fantastic information to impart. And thank you so much for being here today.
Well, thank you. And as I expressed right at the beginning, thank you for inviting me, because it did lead me to explore something that I hadn't been able to do up till now. So thank you for your work and your lovely podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Caregiver Cast today. Get a community of support, resources, and strategies for your caregiving journey inside the Caregiver Lifeline community. Visit caregiverlifelinecommunity.com. Get involved with the show. Send your email to mpetrucci2002@gmail.com. And we'll see you again next week for another episode of Caregiver Cast.